Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne here with you on this Tuesday. God, what a weekend it was. Just got back from Atlanta last night about 9 o'clock. Went down to the Auburn game, if that's what you want to call it. But the great purge has begun on the plains. We've got a great show lined up for you today. From Atlanta, Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart, and the media guys will be on with us. Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago. Joined in the second segment, of course, by David Schultz from WNSP down in Mobile, talking SEC, Sun Belt, college football. He's a member of Q's Nation. Always like to get his take on all that stuff. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, top of hour number 2, checks in from Athens. The undefeated Dogs get ready to play the undefeated Vols. And Johnny Ballpark Franks in the fourth segment will join us as well. Give us a follow on Twitter at Sidelines_live. We'll follow you back. We're here Monday through Saturday, 6 days a week. Sidelines.live. Also 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta. Kicks 96.3, Alexander City, Lake Martin, on the Radio Alabama group of stations. So let's get talking some college football. And Tony Barnhart, first off, Friday in Atlanta afternoon, and I know you were down in Jacksonville for the Florida-Georgia game. Man, it was sad to hear a legend, Vince Dooley, passed away, and I got a chance to talk to Ralph Jordan Jr. And his wife Eve at the Auburn game Saturday, and that's like family to all us old Auburn and Georgia people. And that I've never, you don't hear me saying cross words about the Dogs because of that respect and those relationships and all. But man, he'll never be forgotten, and what he did for Georgia and all of us that love college football. We grew up, and so just you're a Dog. You were there during the Dooley years, and that's a man. He's a man's man. United States Marine, played at Auburn. He lived and will always be remembered as a great legend for Georgia. What are your greatest memories of Coach Dooley?
Well, I think the thing about Coach Dooley, and I've said this many times since last Friday, is that he was so much more than a football coach. He was a great football coach. He's a Hall of Fame football coach. 201 wins, 6 SEC championships, national championship, wonderful football coach. But he had so much more going on in his life. He was a truly Renaissance man. He loved gardening. He's a master, designated by the state of Georgia. He is a master gardener.
Yeah.
Anything like that he did, he wanted to do well. He's a Civil War historian.
Oh, yeah.
As good as you will ever find. He's been to every major battlefield, has studied them in depth. So my point is, Coach Dooley gave 41 years of his life to Georgia, both as a football coach and as a director of athletics. And his imprint on that university will last forever. We knew a bunch of us who were close to the Dooley family, we knew this was coming, but it didn't make it any easier.
Yeah. No, it didn't. And because, I mean, you think about and I know a big honor was just put on him, the Nick Saban Legacy Award, and that's coming up in February. So, and everybody in Birmingham was just so excited to get to see him. But, he's something special. And I've got a lot of Georgia friends around the country that just you think about Dooley's Dogs and Irk Russell and just that narrative that you think when you think about Georgia. And, as Ralph Jordan said, he said, Rob, I was born in Athens. He goes, Wally Butts is my godfather. And that's a special deal. And I know a lot of the younger people, they don't understand all that stuff, but man, a lot of respect between those two schools, great rivalry, but you know what? At the end of the day, great relationships. So never, ever will he be forgotten. The Dooley family, incredible. Tony, big one this weekend in Athens. And wow, the college football playoff rankings come out tonight. Tennessee and Georgia. Is this take number 173 game of the century? But this is a big one coming up. What are your thoughts?
Well, so much is on the line, and you couldn't have the timing any better on the week of the first set of rankings, which are the only rankings that mean anything. And we'll get the rankings tonight, and we'll all want to know. It'll be Tennessee, Georgia, and Ohio State. Now, what order will it be in? that's the surprise factor tonight. Also, 2 weeks ago we had 15 undefeated teams. Now there are 6, and 4 of those teams, Ohio State and Michigan, Tennessee, and Georgia, are going to play each other this month, as a matter of fact. So a lot of news to be made on that, and it's going to be interesting to see where the committee positions these teams and what do they do. The biggest question I have right now is, where are you going to put Clemson? Where is Clemson going to land up? Because Clemson is I don't want to say the fly in the ointment, but they have a very good chance to go 13-0, and we're going to have a big argument, I believe, about Clemson, a 13-0 Clemson versus, say, a one-loss SEC team for the 4th spot, something like that. So there's a lot going on tonight.
Yeah, so that you can already see that one coming down the turnpike. And Auburn made a change yesterday. No real surprise. I can't remember being at a game like what I saw, but in 130 years of Auburn football history, since February 20th, 1892, Piedmont Park, Atlanta, Tigers 10, Dogs nothing. They've never given up 40 or more points 4 times in a single season. And it happened this year, but I also say that Brian Harsin was there. I don't think I ever heard him invoke things about Auburn. I don't know if he ever got Auburn. People can say, well, he wasn't treated well. Well, I never lost a job and got $15.3 million on my way out the door. Who do you think Auburn goes to? They got a new athletic director, and a lot of things yesterday, boy, there was a great purge. I think they were just going door to door, and a lot of people are gone. Smoke will clear eventually. Cadillac Williams is the interim coach, but who are 3 or 4 choices you think Auburn would go after?
Well, I find it impossible to believe that John Cohen won't pick up the phone and call Lane Kiffin's representative. You're going to make Lane Kiffin say no.
Yeah.
Because what Auburn needs, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, is somebody, a proven offensive mind to take it over. And look what a proven offensive mind does to the University of Tennessee. Took him 2 years and a quarterback and a bunch of great receivers, and now they're going to be the number 1, 2, or 3 team in the nation. That's a phone call you got to make. I think you have to make the phone call. Well, John Cohen, who's a proven athletic director in this conference, has to take the temperature of his people there, including the president, and see if Hugh Freeze can become a candidate. I think you've got to make a decision on that. Hugh Freeze left, obviously, with some baggage, but I think, like most people, I think he's paid his dues. Yeah. And he has certainly rewarded Liberty with their trust in him. He has certainly made the best on that. And I'm interested in the debate about Hugh Freeze. If we were looking at it strictly from a football standpoint, to me, it would be a no-brainer.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And Bobby Petrino is another one who's paid his dues and, came to the Touchdown Club in Little Rock last year and received a standing ovation, apologized for what he did. And I mean, people make mistakes. It's just don't, make them repeated mistakes, but it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be a really interesting search, and Matt Rule's another name you hear, but I like the first 2 that you mentioned. Jimmy Hodge jumping here with Tony Barnhart. Mr. College Football always will be Mr. College Football forever.
Tony, I found your comments about Clemson interesting because they're kind of in lockstep with me. I've seen them 3 times as far as just watching them at length, and they haven't been impressive in any of the 3 games. I think strength of schedule is going to be a huge factor when you look at the loser of Ohio State, Michigan, and Tennessee, Georgia, because whoever loses Tennessee, Georgia is going to be right at the front of the line under any circumstances. Obviously, both teams can't be in the SEC championship game, but you look at Clemson, even at 13-0. I mean, it's hard to pick a team that they've beaten that is, an elite team. and maybe Notre Dame might take care of this. I don't know, but I just put them in the SEC, and it would be a stretch for me to put them any higher than fourth. And the way LSU's played the last couple of weeks, that would be a stretch. But that is the system that we have, and it's hard to imagine a 13-0 Clemson team not getting in. How do you look at the situation?
Well, first of all, you begin with a fact. Okay, this is a fact. The committee has never left out an undefeated Power 5 champion ever. It's never happened. Okay, this would be a first if they did that. Now, this comes down to the old argument of is it the eye test or is it the resume? It's the people you beat, and everybody has their own way of making that decision. I've sat in that room. I've gone through the mock draft. I know what it's like, and you really have to make those kinds of decisions. And to me, the whole thing, if Clemson does not lose, to me, it will come down to Clemson and a very good one-loss team from somewhere, probably the SEC, to get one of those other spots. So let's see where Clemson is tonight. For example, I'm sitting there looking at the AP poll. Right now, Clemson is 5, with Alabama 6. Based on the schedule, Alabama would be a better team. But let's that's the most interesting thing tonight is where do they put Clemson?
Tony, I'll follow that up with what about TCU? You know, had a lot of windshield time driving home last night from Atlanta, and listened to a Big 12 show on Sirius. Texas, a lot of influence out there, but TCU is that a team that gets you excited, or do they not have the resume?
Well, their resume needs to be 13-0. Okay, yeah. They don't excite me as a one-loss team because I think there are other one-loss. But here's TCU's closing schedule: Texas Tech at home, at Texas, at Baylor, and Iowa State. At Texas and at Baylor, those will be very difficult games for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when you look at, we're going to try to have Bill Hancock on the show later this week, and I know that they're huddled up out in Dallas. What goes through, and this is a difficult question, but you're smart. You're very smart. You get this. What goes through their minds? Do they think about criticism from certain regions of the country? And as Jimmy and a lot of people will talk about, I hate that term, but you got to use it. They call it SEC fatigue. But if you're the best, you're the best. And as an Auburn grad, I don't have a problem at all giving credit to the best teams. I mean, I'm not going to do that. Alabama, if they're 6th, look at the schedule they're playing. They can close out. They'll get in the playoffs. TCU, man, that is a brutal schedule for them at the end of the year.
Yep, it is. And to go back to your previous question about does the committee think about how folks are going to criticize it, that I am very confident in saying that is never discussed. And I don't. The committee, all of the people on the committee are very accomplished people in their own professional world. Yeah. And I don't see that. And if there is there's going to be criticism. I mean, come on, if you don't want criticism, then don't sign up for this tour, do you? Okay. But does it impact you? No. I think the committee's done a really good job in the time that it's been together. And I always like the idea of rather than have the old BCS style thing of computers and all that. Let's put everything on the table. Let's debate it as a committee. Let's make a decision and live with the decision. That's what this committee has done.
Yeah, and the interest in college football. You go back to 2 years ago in the pandemic when we were only allowed to have 20% crowds or something close to that. The fans are coming back. What is it going forward that you see is the biggest concern, transfer portal, NIL, or whatever, to keeping fans fully invested in the game?
Well, one of the things the fans have to realize is something that Commissioner Sankey told his coaches earlier this year. Guys, it's never going to be the way it was. All right. I would say that to the fans. It's never going to be the way it was. We're going to have guys leaving. You're going to have NIL. That is the new reality of college football. But the game on the field is better than it's ever been. And that's, if you're a fan, that's what you hang your hat on. I don't like it when players leave. Okay. The schools don't like it when players leave. But if you're going to be a football fan, a college football fan, guess what, Bubba? You're going to have to adjust and learn to live with it, because this is the new reality.
Yeah, it is. Tony, I know you're up against the tight schedule this morning. Before you go, let people know how they can follow you, because you put out great work all over, also on Twitter. That's why you're Mr. College Football. We love having you on here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. My business partners and I, they're my friends. These are four old newspaper guys that sit around and write about college football and talk about college football. But the name of our website is The Media Guides, or TMG College Sports. Really the easy way I've told people, I said, go to Google, write TMG College Sports, and what will come up will be our website. And that's we do, each of us, there's four of us, we each write about 2 to 3 times a week. We do a podcast that we post on Fridays, getting ready for the weekend, and we're having a whole lot of fun with it.
Well, that's what we need in true grit journalism. You're going out there, finding the stories. And I think, what'd you say one time, the combined journalism experience of the four of y'all is 150 years?
Yeah. Bunch of old guys, but we're having fun.
You ain't old guys. Look, I think Jimmy and all of us will say this. You when you get the writers, and you're a writer on our shows, the best guest, no doubt, because you think about what you're saying because you've already written it. And that makes all the difference in the world. And I know that we really, again, appreciate you taking time to join us. And I look forward to having you back on here again soon. And you're going to be in Athens this weekend, correct?
I will be there.
Yeah, that's going to be the top spot to be in the world this weekend. Now we're going to take a quick break and be back with more Sidelines after this. Thanks so much, Mr. College Football, joining us.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BBG for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back with you here on Sidelines, Tuesday edition. Great first segment there with Mr. College Football. Tony Barnhart, check him out. The Media Guides. You want to read great sports writers. He and his 3 partners, they're all friends. He's right. But 150 plus years of writing, covering college football and all like that. So, all right, Jimmy, boy, you wouldn't have wanted to be in the athletic complex at Auburn yesterday afternoon. You could hear the screams and the moans and the wailing. You're just walking up and down the hall. And a lot of people, let's just say the great purge has begun. And I'm not so sure if they're going to get Harson's people, a lot of Gus's people that are still there. it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but they got to do a great purge. Auburn is flat on their back in the hospital in a body cast right now. And they have got to go through rehab, learn to walk again, learn to talk. What I saw Saturday was so god awful. And you think about, that stadium. I'm surprised that as many people were there, Jimmy. I thought a lot of them were going to come disguised as aluminum bleacher seats. But now Cadillac Williams, he's the interim coach. And he's a young coach. Maybe one day he's going to be a head coach. He's going to do his best to try to hold them together. So that was interesting. And it just goes to show you, if you recruit offensive linemen and you know how to develop them, I mean, you can quickly dispatch anybody that you play. And looking now at this college football, again, last night, driving home, listening to the Big 12 show on Sirius XM, it was interesting, TCU not getting a lot of attention. They're TCU. They're playing in the Big 12. But this committee is in Dallas. And I don't think, it's a stretch to say that there are people on that committee in Dallas that'll be voting that have TCU connections. Who knows what'll happen? But Jimmy, we got a few minutes before Dave Schultz comes on. Give me your top 4 teams right now. If I were to put your head in a record press and say, I'm going to keep squeezing until you give me 4, give me your top 4.
Well, I said yesterday, I think right now Tennessee's got to be number 1. Just the way they played following the win against Alabama. I mean, they just dismantled a Kentucky team that, would be near the top at a lot of other conferences. And it was just stunning to see, how efficiently Tennessee just picked them apart. And Georgia would be number 2. For an SEC program, they have about the weakest schedule up to this point that you could come up with. And then even if they win or lose against Tennessee, I don't foresee them being challenged at all. But with that being said, though, they're solid too. Ohio State. Now, you talk about somebody that's played nobody. I think the Buckeyes would have to be in that category. Penn State, has some talent offensively, but it was kind of alarming to see how they made Ohio State's defense look ordinary for much of the game. So I don't think Ohio State's up there with the first 2 teams I mentioned. And yeah, I think TCU could very well be that number 4 spot. Yeah, they've struggled in some games, but man, their offense is really good. And if you can score points, you have a chance to make a run in the playoff. Like I said, Clemson is going to be number 5. They're certainly not number 5 in my rankings, but they'll be there tonight. And then Alabama will be 6th.
Yeah. And you look at that, TCU, Ohio State, Georgia, Tennessee. And I agree with you about Ohio State. They've played nobody. Now, is it true that if you beat Auburn this year, it really doesn't count? I mean, God, I just looking at, for Penn State to think that was a quality victory on the road at Auburn, that's a false narrative. Tennessee, 5 wins now, or is it 6 over ranked teams? Now, again, as the season goes along, Jimmy, that Appalachian State win at number 6 Texas A&M is a joke. I mean, at the time, that's why you shouldn't have rankings till about the 5th or 6th week of the season. But at the time, it was a big deal. They were number 6 in the country. But you have to put things in perspective. What I kept reminding people of, Auburn-Ole Miss game. No Auburn coach in history has ever survived losing to Ole Miss in Oxford. Add Brian Harsin to that list. And I'm just looking around. Brian Kelly, let's do some quick back and forth. Brian Kelly, give him a grade up to this point in his first year at LSU.
A.
Okay. All right. Let's ask another one. Mike Leach in year 3. They started off 5-1. Give me a grade on him.
C plus.
Is it ever going to get any better with Mike Leach with the offense that he runs playing in the SEC?
I think it can. This is the first season I can remember. Now, I think Coach Sherrill had said during a couple of his years at Texas Tech that he did commit to the running game, but it's the first year that I could see him this season making a commitment to the running game. And I think he's kind of evolving. And if he can get the running game involved into his offense and really also get his linemen focused on, straight ahead, a blocking that's required in the running game, I think this program can make some advances because if you force defenses to have to commit more people in the box to stop the running game, I think you got a lot of potential there. I think Zach Arnett's a really good defensive coordinator.
I do too.
I like the direction of their program, although he's just in year 3.
And you go back historically and you look, when you run the ball a lot in practice, your offensive and defensive lines go head to head. They butt heads. That toughens you up. And you can't just kind of give a sort of half-ass commitment to a running game. You've got to be all in. It's a state of mind. You don't just show up Friday in the walkthrough and go, okay, tomorrow we're going to get physical, guys, when you've been playing, 4 wides and an empty set backfield and just you're not a physical team. And that's very hard to do. I go back to Tennessee. Man, the job that Josh Heupel does, Tony Barnhart's right. They make you play every square inch of the football field, and that's hard to defend. Quick one, Jimmy. Cedric Tillman's coming back for Tennessee. Does Tennessee kind of like – they've been playing, on edge with their hair on fire without him. Are they lulled into a false sense of security going, okay, our big guy's back? Like when you were in 5th grade and you had a guy that was 6'3" on your team like I did that was, going through puberty real early. And if he wasn't there, we struggled. But when he was there, we'd beat people in 5th and 6th grade basketball 84-32 and stuff. I worry about that. I know that sounds crazy, but Dave Schultz is on with us from WNSP down in Mobile. But Jimmy, I'm curious about that Tennessee thing. We'll get back to that later. But David Schultz, how are you down there in the Port City, the Sultan of the Sun Belt, alumnus of the Q's Nation? There's a lot on your mind, and I'm just going to say, ready, get set, let's go.
Anyone replacing Tommy Rees yet? I mean, what is he doing? I mean, I'm no football savant, but there was no reason Notre Dame should have passed that ball more than 5 times against Syracuse. These guys make it way harder than it needs to be. All right. I mean, you want to throw it to the tight end? Okay. He's got to understand the 3 guys on the Syracuse defensive line can't stop the 5 or 6 or 7 guys blocking for us. All right. I got that off my chest. All right. And so Auburn hires a AD and fires the football coach all on the same day. So nothing for me to talk about yesterday. Goodness. I guess that just the inevitable, although I am interested in the whole John Cohen thing. That seems kind of, I wouldn't say totally out of the blue because we sort of had a hint of it on Friday and Saturday, but why does he leave his school where he went to college, where he coached and was the AD for a couple of more bucks? Now Auburn is a bigger athletic program. They do have some more Olympic sports. Gymnastics is a huge program in the SEC. You got equestrian, which they're really good at, and swimming and diving, among others. So I'm not sure why the move was. Also, why doesn't Mississippi State, counter? So I'm wondering about that. As far as the Brian Harsin thing, again, the inevitable, what I don't want to happen, I'm going to talk about this on my show today, I don't want them to play patty cake with Lane Kiffin and or Hugh Freeze, although I don't think they would with Hugh Freeze. I think if they offered to Hugh Freeze, he's taking it. But don't show up on December 15th and go hire Matt Rule. If you want Matt Rule, go get him now. You could have a Clay Helton situation where he's not coaching, and yet he's going to have the pick of the litter for the OC and the DC. And he's recruiting, and I don't know when the dead period is, but, all of a sudden that early recruiting period is not gone. Whereas if you're waiting until after the SEC championship game to hire Lane Kiffin or, later on to hire Hugh Freeze, you're going to lose that early signing period. Although this is the way I think the conversations are going to go. Hey, Lane, it's John Cohen from the university or from Auburn University. Hi, John. How are you? What's going on? Whereas, hi, Hugh, it's John Cohen from Auburn University. Yes, that's how I think the conversations are going to go. I'm not sure there's going to be a whole lot of patty cake with Hugh Freeze if they want him. The thing is, if Lane Kiffin, and I'm just guessing that his agent is Jimmy Sexton, that he goes all Jimmy Sexton, all of a sudden, he gets a nice $1.5 million raise, and all of a sudden he's making $45 million over at Ole Miss, and then Auburn is on plan B. I presume John Cohen's going to know that going into these negotiations. And very oddly enough, guys, Jimmy, Lane has said some odd things about lack of fan support and losing his defensive coordinator to A&M. So Lane likes to tweak. It doesn't matter who, Saban or Jimbo or in this case, Ole Miss. So I don't know if he's really interested in coming. People say that he might be. Who knows? That's certainly going to give me content for the next month and a half, which is all I really care about. And so we'll see how this goes. But I don't want them to end up with Plan C when they could have had Matt Rule, this week if they really wanted to. But we'll see. I'm sure it's going to get drawn out at least a month, and we'll go from there.
Well, Brian Harsin was introduced as the new Auburn coach Christmas Eve. He was fired. He was fired on Halloween. What an interesting dichotomy. But the great purge is underway at Auburn. I mean, within minutes, they're going up and down the halls, man, and just the screams and the moans and the wailing of just But in the case of Brian Harsin, they didn't even mention his name at the press conference when he was fired. I have never seen. I don't think the guy loved Auburn. He didn't get Auburn. The Boise, the Potato Boys, they didn't get Auburn. Good riddance. I'm glad they're gone. And I'll tell you something. They better learn something. The fans own college football. And when fans are trying to help you and get involved and support you, don't ignore them. Don't turn your back on them. And don't begrudgingly go to, functions. And it's just to all coaches. It's absurd. But Tony Barnhart was on in the first segment. He said, Auburn's got to make him say no. Hugh Freeze. I noticed that a lot of people were putting out Friday, forget about it, Auburn. It ain't going to happen. Hugh Freeze is going to stay at Liberty. He just got a new contract. Well, getting a new contract and agreeing in principle to it and signing it are two different things. I don't know if he signed it or not, but I hear from a lot of people that say, I talked to Freeze, he's not coming. Okay. You're going to turn down the Auburn job and stay at Liberty. Good for you. I mean, if you want to stay there,
he's not.
You don't think so?
He's not. If he was offered the Auburn job, he's taking the Auburn job. Whatever the contract is, whenever he signs it, the buyout is not that much. It's more of a nice gesture for Hugh Freeze to stay at Liberty. And Liberty, regardless of what you think of the university's got a lot of issues going on with the administration. So that's a whole different story. Jimmy, what I want to talk to you about is how Brian Harsin went about recruiting, because I just don't think it can't be that hard. I guess to get the kids to come is one thing, but it felt like Brian Harsin made it more difficult than it was, right? Because I can tell you, as long as 3 weeks ago, they were still complaining that we showed up and it was COVID, so we couldn't go visit the schools. Instead of seeing that as a positive, where I don't have to get into a car, I don't have to get into a plane, I can just sit in my office and Zoom these coaches for a half an hour, and I can do, 2 an hour and 24 a day, and I could have had the whole state of Alabama done in a month and a half, and I didn't have to get into my car, and I can watch film at night, right, at home or something along those lines, as we're putting the staff together and getting ready for spring football. They're still talking about, we couldn't go recruit. And I can't get over that. And then after all those allegations went away at the beginning of this year, you still find out, like in April, I think it was, or maybe it was March. It wasn't that long after that. They did a whole thing. He hasn't visited or made contact at Thompson High School.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
I'm an idiot Yankee from upstate New York. And the two schools that I'm going to visit, if I'm recruiting, if I'm coaching Alabama or Auburn, I'm going to visit Hoover and Thompson. I'll figure out everything after that.
Dave, You're not an idiot, though. You're very smart. I'll just give you credit for that.
I mean,
Dave, in contrast, I know you remember this. Almost the minute that Nick Saban got the Alabama job, I think the first visit he made was to John Curtis in the New Orleans area, because Joel McKnight, I mean, he had already committed to USC, but Saban was sending a message that they were going after anybody and everybody, and they were letting all the iconic coaches in the Southeast know that they were going to be visiting their programs on a regular basis. And even though the timing, was not there to have a chance for a player like McKnight, he was letting people know that Alabama was going for the cream of the crop. And that's why I really think that after this latest fiasco with Harsin, that Auburn has to go with a coach that has SEC roots, and that's where, or at least SEC experience, and that's where Friesen and Kiffin would be at the forefront, whereas Matt Rule does not have any connections in the SEC. I think Auburn is going to make those two guys say no and then go from there, although it's very impressive. A lot of people don't realize that Matt Rule turned
Jimmy, hold those
down
thoughts.
the Oregon job when he took the Baylor job.
We can take a break. We're going to come back. I want you to pick up on that after this because you're making a great point. We're going to get Sam Kennison to interview these guys. Say it! We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959, right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
All right, Rob Browne back with David Schultz down in Mobile, in the port city, eating some good oysters, Rockefeller, fried oysters, smoked oysters, baked oysters, fried shrimp, everything. You live in heaven on earth. You're up from upstate New York, but once you get down there on the Gulf Coast, eating all that Gulf Coast seafood, Dave, you'll never go back. Jimmy, you were making great points right before the break, so hate to stop you, but I've got to watch that watch continue because we need to hear this.
Yeah, again, I think Auburn absolutely has to go with somebody that has Division I head coaching experience, but not only that, significant proven success at that level. And again, it's a different place to coach. I mean, the culture is totally different, and if you haven't had some kind of connection with it, you have to have somebody that's maybe your right-hand man that can give you constant advice on how things operate at Auburn, because it's not something you're going to pick up cold turkey. I mean, you're going to have to get a lot of help from your staff and again, that football building in general. So it's going to be a really interesting a time frame. I think in this case, this may be the most important hire that Auburn's made in, a couple of decades, because, after the last two, even though Gus lasted 7 or 8 seasons, though, everybody knew that that this was eventually going to happen, because there were 2 different games. We know that if he didn't win that day, he was going to be gone. The LSU game,
That's right.
LSU snapped the ball a half second late, and that was a $49 million late snap for Gus, because he remained. And then the Georgia game in 2017. He was going to be gone if he didn't win that game. So they have to absolutely get it right. And that's something you can't rush, even though right now it seems critical, because this early signing period, you've lost it anyway. Because with a new coaching staff, a lot of those coaches might not agree on the same targets that this current coaching staff had. So they're just going to have to take their time and be absolutely sure of what they're going to do.
Well,
hey, Jimmy, hold on one thing, Rob. Jimmy, you went back all the way to 2007 for Nick Saban. I don't know if Alabama has a better social media crew than Auburn. I doubt it. But all I know is that after Nick Saban and Alabama lost to Georgia, all I did was see Nick Saban out recruiting. All I did for 3 weeks. He was at a new school or seeing a new recruit every single day. Like, I don't even know if he went back to Tuscaloosa that night. He just went, hey, guys, thanks for a great season. I got to go recruit. And I just didn't see Brian Harsin out there, right? And, what's taking him so long? So, I don't even think they're in on – again, I mentioned this before on the show. I don't even think they're in Josh Flowers at Baker High. I mean, maybe you can't get him, but you got to be in on him. And if you're not in on him, you got to be on the next guy that comes out of Baker. So, like you said, he went to John Curtis. He couldn't get the USC kid, but maybe you get the next kid, right? And of course, he doesn't have any connections in Alabama yet. All his connections were from LSU, New Orleans because of LSU. So he went to where he was familiar with, and then of course he comes over here to go get the Julio Joneses of the world.
Yeah, interesting text I just got from from one of our listeners, Felix Grundy. Saban was at Auburn High School on his 8th day on the job, making a statement, firing a shot over the bow. Hey, we're coming and you ain't going to stop us. Good luck. That is what happened. You got Reuben Foster, you got Rashawn Evans, his father played at Auburn, but I think he had an extra grind with the coaching staff there. His father, Allen Evans, came in, number 1 running back in America out of high school, had 57 yards rushing in 2 years. I think the kid did want to go to Auburn and then eventually just said, I want to get out of here. But you're right. And people that have seen Harsin recruiting will tell you it was awkward. It was uncomfortable for him talking to recruits. And there's absolutely zero excuse. And again, nobody else can say, I just got fired and got a $15.3 million check. Auburn better get it right, because there's only so many times you can keep going to your fan base and saying, hey, we need more cat litter in the cat box to cover up the cat, issues. Okay. That I don't know how much longer you can keep doing that. And you talk about, you got wealthy boosters with a lot of money. I can tell you from experience, 31 years in wealth management, wealthy people don't flush their money down. They don't just throw money away. And if you got some that do, maybe they're loaning it to you on a 5-year deal or a 10-year deal that you pay them back to get rid of these mistakes. But at some point, David Schultz, you're going to have to hold the search committees, the search firms, the boards of trustees, the presidents, the athletic directors, all these people accountable for what they're doing. You look at the hire of Stephen Leath as president back in July of 2017 at Auburn. Who vetted this guy? Who checked this creep out? I mean, you look at what he did renovating the mansion down at Auburn, the president's mansion, forcing Auburn into that Gus Malzahn 49, 749-32, 7 years, $49 million, $32 million buyout. Okay. You look at, he brought in Alan Green as athletic director, who hired Brian Harsin. As a friend of mine, Clyde Gustafson told me last night, Auburn alum from Sylacauga, Stephen Leath has cost Auburn well over $100 million. These are state universities, state employees that have salaries, tenure, guarantees. They fear nothing. There's no accountability. This crap has got to stop. You can't keep eventually you're going to run out of other people's money to flush down the toilet.
Well, the people with the money are the ones who are dictating who's getting fired, right? I mean, if this is not coming out of some Auburn fund, this is coming out of, 1 or 2 people's pockets, to fire and pay off.
Are you sure?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going
to check into that, because if you're taking money that your boosters are giving you and paying off these coaches, I wouldn't give another penny for the next 200 years.
Yeah, but you know who the one guy is who's saying we're going to do this now. So if I know, and I'm the idiot from upstate New York, then you guys know who is kind of dictating these terms. This thing does not get done the way it was done unless someone's coming up with the cash. I doubt this is coming from, no way this is coming from Auburn's, general fund.
No.
Same thing with LSU, right? They paid Ed Orgeron. That's all private money, right? None of it is public funding. It's all coming from private money, and it's probably coming from a handful of people, and they're the ones who kind of, dictate it. Well, but that's the problem with this, Rob, and it'll be very interesting to see how a Hugh Freeze deals with it or a Lane Kiffin. I can't imagine that these guys are going to go in there and tell the money people who they need, my way or the highway. But just to let you guys know, suggestions are welcomed, but I have the final say, and you got to do that. PC is not the word you want to do. You got to do that. I'll just say it, politically correct, because if you want the money to keep on coming, you're going to have to listen to what they say, but you have to politely decline. This is the way we're going to do things. Because how do you think Nick Saban handles it? Right? I mean, we had people call up yesterday on the show. It's like, Alabama doesn't have the same kind of boosters that Auburn does. Of course they do. But I don't know if Nick Saban just won sooner or whatever the case was, or wins more. Obviously he does that. But, they're not all in his head and in his hair, messing up the program. So somewhere along the way that these new coaches are going to say, we welcome the suggestions, but I'm going to have the final say when we make these decisions.
Yeah, and I'll say this, that what I said about the money, that's a general statement for all schools out there. And I imagine, remember the movie Animal House when Carmine was in there with Dean Wormer, and Dean Wormer, they needed some money for something, and he goes, well, I'd imagine we can arrange for a nice honorarium from the alumni fund. I'm just curious. I've never had a salary. I'm commissioned. I eat what I kill. I can't imagine. But if you've got tenure as a professor, you can do whatever you want and you can't be fired. And so the people making these decisions and the people, I like what Kevin Skarbinski, one of my favorite writers around, said in his Sunday column in the Birmingham Lead. Anyone who was a part of the search committee that brought in Brian Harsin should not be allowed to be within 3 football fields of the next one. I like that. I'm just saying, you've got to be accountable. Okay. And when you've got people, look, if you're asking what it costs to run athletic departments, Jimmy and David, and then if you've got a pile of money built up and you're taking from that, and that ought to all be public knowledge, and you're using that to pay for these bad hires, I say what you do is you take the salaries of the people who made those hires and dock them. That's how the real world works.
Aren't that? I mean, the president is gone. The AD is gone. I don't know who the search firm was that helped out Brian Harsin, but remember, they didn't get their first choices. Auburn tried to hire Billy Napier. Couldn't do it. They tried to hire Brent Venables. Didn't know who he was reporting to. And I got this bit of news yesterday because Napier a couple years ago was up for the Mississippi State job, and he wanted John Cohen to keep it on the down low, and John Cohen couldn't keep it on the down low. And so that ruined any kind of relationship at that point in time. And so, somewhere along the way, is that going to be the case with Lane Kiffin that, he's going to accept the job before the Egg Bowl, but you got to keep it on the down low, and John Cohen opens his mouth, and all of a sudden, Lane Kiffin's going to Auburn, and then Lane Kiffin, after winning the Egg Bowl, says, no, I'm staying at Ole Miss.
Yeah, and a couple
extra days. I don't know.
Yeah. And Kirby Smart was almost the Auburn coach, but then you had a couple of Auburn power brokers that said, no, he's not going to coach in that national championship game. If you're going to take the Auburn job, you're leaving right now, which was absolutely asinine because what better publicity could you get for your incoming to head coach to be the defensive coordinator of a national championship program, and you're leaving them to go to your school?
David Schultz, that's what we call Doug Dean, our friend, the AU Dose in Birmingham, on the show a couple of times a week with us. Jabba, just Auburn being Auburn.
Yeah, that seems to be a very poor short-term decision that cost Auburn long-term.
Yeah.
Like Jimmy said, I don't even know if the early signing period was probably not around at that point in time.
It was not. No.
But I mean, you can't let him coach for another, what you hire him around Christmas, and you're not going to allow him to coach at, in the next week or so. I mean, that's just foolish.
Yeah.
That's just foolish. He can put it, if anything, he would take time away from coaching for the national championship to get ready to, you've got to hire coaches. He's got to find a place to live. And, his time is going to be spread thin. It would be Nick Saban who would be upset that if he's, got one eye on the national championship and one eye trying to get ready to coach Auburn. Not Auburn being upset. That is really, I guess, Jabba, as you said.
And you know what? Nick Saban is the voice for Alabama. Everything goes through him. Kirby Smart, everything goes through him. And if Auburn can get everybody rowing in the same direction, watch out. But the recruiting last January, David and Jimmy, I think the first week they could go out on the road, Barnhart went to like 7 or 8 schools, and Nick Saban and Kirby Smart were between 35 and 40. Right. I mean, that's all you need to know. And so why was he not fired with cause? Because that's dereliction of duty.
Well, this is what I heard, and I forget the man's name, right? They brought in in less than 2 seasons, I think Brian Harsin had 3.5 offensive coordinators. One of them was Russell Wilson's quarterback coach, who lasted, I'm not even sure he lasted a month, right? And the word was, he was the one telling Brian Harsin, hey, coach, we got to get out there. Nick Saban is out there recruiting every single day. We got to go to all these different schools. And just like he did during COVID, he just didn't get out. And I'm guessing it's just, different when you are recruiting Idaho, right? I mean, you can't go to, if you're going to a bunch of different towns or things like that in Idaho, right? That's probably going to be an all-day deal. Whereas I can go to every high school in Birmingham and take 2 or 3 days and just drive around the entire town. Same thing with Montgomery. Same thing with Huntsville. Same thing with Mobile and Baldwin County, right? It doesn't take very long. No. And you have the benefit of, well, I can't get there because of travel or whatever. Can we do it on the computer for 10 minutes? And we'll go from there. And again, to close the sale is one thing, but to not even knock on the door is another. And that really is, to me, unacceptable.
Make people tell you no. Treat the word no as tell me more. Treat the word impossible as motivation, okay? But Brian Harsin stuck out like Ishmael Borg in the movie Kingpin when he was out, it was awkward for him to talk to these kids. How somebody at Auburn and the people interviewing this guy and all those responsible for interviewing him and thinking he got it, these are living brain donors, in my opinion. I mean, shame on them. And because you look at what people spend to support you, remember, as the AD, the president, the coach, you're the CEO, the CFO, the COO of a publicly traded corporation. And when you have a football game at Auburn or Alabama or Florida or Tennessee, Ole Miss, whatever, those are shareholders meetings. Listen, you got to have your boosters. I get that. But you better think about the consequences. You've got people in government, career government employees that have never been in the private sector. They've never had to balance a budget. They don't know what a spreadsheet looks like. They don't know what a cost analysis looks like. They don't know what a pro forma study is. Honestly, they don't know come here from Sikkim. Yet they have the power to make these decisions that spend millions and ultimately billions of dollars. I mean, whoever hired Stephen Leith and signed off on that, those people should be given a 5-year ban from Auburn's campus.
Yeah, but doesn't it happen all the time? I mean, look at Mel Tucker. Why do we have to give Mel Tucker that kind of? Where was he going? Was he going somewhere else? Was he coming to Auburn? Where was Mel Tucker going? Right?
Nowhere. Going home.
To be honest with you, same thing goes for Dino Babers, right? I think he's got a couple years left on his contract, but why don't we wait one? Let's see how the year finishes out. And, at the end of the year, give him another 4-year deal, but he's 61. Where's he going? Right? You want to keep him because he likes Syracuse, and Syracuse is by far not the easiest place to recruit and play college football these days. But let's be careful on how much we're giving him. If he wants way too much money, move on to the next guy, right? Yeah. I don't need to give Dino Babers, honestly, I don't need to give him a 5-year, $25 million contract or something along those lines. I guess that's pretty low these days, but he really hasn't earned it yet. And so I want to be careful with that. That's where did this start, Jimmy? That came up, was it like Bobby Knight where the big buyout or something like that? Was there a buyout with Rick Pitino? Someone said that Mike Shula actually had a big buyout. Where did these big buyouts start? Because you would think that, you would get, if we fire you because we don't like the job you were doing, you get 50% left on your contract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, we're running out of time to go into the break, but David, tell people how they can follow you. This is unbelievable conversation.
All right, at SchultzCast, SchultzCast. I'm impressed I spelled that right. And we're on WNSP Sports Radio 105.5 at 3 to 6 p.m. Central, and you can also check out Locked On Sunbelt. We got some huge ball games. Troy is at the Cajuns, and that's got the West title hanging on the balance, and you got App State and Coastal, which will go a long way for the East.
Hey, great stuff as always. Thanks so much. Look forward to next week. You are incredible. We'll be right back with more Sidelines.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BB King for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. Hour number 2. We'll be joined in a minute by Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports covering Georgia. Jimmy, if you were an athletic director or president of Jordan Hill is going to join us right now, how do you make sense? How do you justify spending the money? Well, if we don't do it, someone else will. David Schultz made me think. Mel Tucker, where was he going to go? Dino Babers, where's he going to go? Somebody's going to have a poker face and call the bluff on somebody. But Jordan Hill, nothing going on this weekend in Athens. Oh, that's right, Tennessee and Georgia. Maybe a number 1 versus number 2 game. But, man, you know, you were in Jacksonville. Let's talk about the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Fun atmosphere. Georgia gets the win. What were the takeaways, and how does this prepare them? What do you think they're going to play like Tennessee come into town when they're going to make you play every square inch of the field?
Well, I think Saturday was another situation where you saw Georgia, you know, let a team into a game. You know, they were in a situation where they played really well. They built a 28-3 lead. You know, a lot of Atlanta Falcons fans were pretty upset to see what happened after that, seeing 28-3. But, you know, it was a situation where just like the Missouri game where they, you know, is definitely the closest they've come to losing this year. And then the Kent State game where they were just not very impressive. Self-inflicted issues. Kenny McIntosh fumbles, which I thought it was an outstanding play by Bernie for Florida, who ripped the ball away, but you know, fumbled nonetheless. And Warren McClendon was in a position to fall on it and just didn't corral the ball, and Florida recovers. And then Stetson Bennett makes a really poor decision on a wheel route and throws an interception. You know, it opened the door, and Florida got the game within 8. But credit to Georgia from there. They closed the book on Florida. 2 straight, or not 2 straight, but the next 2 touchdowns of the game were from Georgia. I thought they responded well. And, you know, I thought it was a situation they played really well. You know, we still wound up winning by 22. did a good job and thought they put themselves in a good position to take care of a rival and then get ready for this big game on Saturday.
Yeah, and you think about it, Florida is just the same thing week in and week out. We hear we got to coach them better, we got to play better, we got to do this, we got to do that. They got a long way to go. But again, Billy Napier wouldn't be the head coach there if Dan Mullen had everything in place. So Georgia now undefeated, 9 sacks on the year?
I think it's up to 10 now. I think they got 3 on Saturday.
Okay. So Tennessee, they come in with a great passing game, an offense that you don't want to get into a boat race with them. Nobody does. Is Georgia built to go blow for blow with Tennessee? I mean, they're the defending national champion. They've lost 1 game in the last 2 years. They're undefeated up to this point. What about Stetson Bennett IV versus Hendon Hooker? I thought there'd be 2 or 3 games this year where he would be asked to go out and win the game for Georgia, whereas last year their defense was so good, he really didn't have to. And they had just more skilled players around them with experience. Talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the matchups and just one of the comparisons that everybody's going to watch is how Stetson plays compared to how Hendon Hooker plays. And, Stetson threw 2 interceptions on Saturday against Florida. I really think only one was one you could blame him on. The first one, he threw it to Dom Blaylock, and it looked like it was going to be an outstanding catch. And as Dom Blaylock was coming down, he hit the ground, and there was a Florida defender right there, and he kind of wrestled the ball away from Dom. So, one of those situations where quarterback gets tagged with the interception. It wasn't quite fair. But I say that to say, too, very first drive of the game, Florida safety Torrance had a shot at a very easy interception, just couldn't make the play. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Stetson. This is going to be a situation. I do think it benefits Georgia greatly that this is going to be a home game. I think if it was in Neyland, that was going to be even more pressure. And, this situation we reported this morning, Nolan Smith, outside linebacker, he is going to be out for the rest of the season. We already knew it was very likely he was not going to play on Saturday, but he's got a torn pec. He's going to have surgery on Thursday. So that's even more pressure, I think, on this offense. I mean, this defense, has struggled to create pressure. Thought they did a much better job against Florida as far as getting after Anthony Richardson, making him uncomfortable. But that was your top outside linebacker. And, Kirby Smart has talked about it, said that Nolan's leadership is bigger than his ability, and his ability is really strong. This defense has lost, probably its top leader, and they're going to be tested right away, and we're going to see how they step up to the challenge.
Yeah, and Tennessee is going to come into the game. You hear, well, their secondary is not great, but defensively, they manhandled Kentucky. I thought that game would be close for maybe a quarter and a half. Tennessee pull away. That's what happened. I don't have a crystal ball. I look at Tennessee coming into the Georgia game, and I see Georgia is the best team in the country until somebody beats them. So for Georgia against Tennessee, what's a score that you don't want to get above what? You don't want to get above 30, 35 points with Tennessee, because then that means it's a shootout.
Yeah, I think if it gets beyond 35, then it's going to be a real challenge. And, I think that people sometimes lose sight of how productive the Georgia offense has been. They're coming off a 42-point game against Florida. Tennessee, I was looking today, obviously they lead the nation in points per game. But, I'm not convinced we're going to see a shootout per se. I mean, especially, we come into these, 1 versus 2, 1 versus 3, these kind of games, and expect that we're going to see certain things. But I think there's going to be a lot of plays and there's going to be a lot of points. I think that this is going to be the biggest test that the the Tennessee secondary has faced all year. And, I think that it's going to be a very interesting challenge. And then, too, on the Georgia side, to see guys like Keely Ringo, who, again, he gave up a big play on Saturday and has been definitely a lot more shaky than I think people expected coming in this year. They're in for a big test, and it's going to be something to watch.
Yeah, and this is interesting. You just said something that's really, really it's true, but most people aren't thinking about it. Give Georgia credit. They scored 42 against Florida. I mean, they've scored a lot of points. They scored 49 on Oregon. You can say, well, that was the first game. Well, it was still a game. I just checked. Hold on a second, Jordan. Yeah, y'all got the credit for the win. Here's where I see an angle on this for Georgia. Everybody's talking about what Tennessee is going to do to Georgia. But if I'm Georgia, I'm going, hey, you got to come through us, man. Everybody's talking about what you're going to do. No, you got to come through us. And you're playing us between the hedges. I think this game, I think Tennessee, if I'm picking right now, I think Tennessee wins. But for Georgia, they're used to winning. And they like Jimmy will talk about it in a minute, but they go on the road, they get that win at Missouri. That was a strange game. Easily could have lost it, but they won it. So that's, again, I'll say that's either a sign the dam's about to burst when they play, because who have they played since Oregon like Tennessee? And Tennessee has beaten 5 ranked teams. That was a good win for Tennessee. They dominated Kentucky. This is going to be 1 versus 2, 1 versus 3, probably. It's going to get all the hype and all. Georgia just needs to play it like they're playing it on the road, and I think they got a real good chance to win.
I agree. And you know what I think will be really interesting? I think there's a pretty good chance that in this college football playoff ranking that comes out tonight, that Tennessee winds up being number 1. And I think if you're Kirby Smart, that's kind of what you're pulling for. You kind of want to be able to say, look, guys, they don't think y'all have done anything. That Oregon win, they're discounting that. They don't think that y'all have accomplished anything. So I think that's a realistic possibility that Tennessee is number 1 in that playoff ranking. And if you're a Georgia fan, I'm sure there'll be some being like, oh, why are we not number 1? If you're really paying attention to this matchup, I think you should have a big old smile on your face if you're a Georgia fan.
Yeah, and Kirby's a master motivator. And so, Tennessee's got to be careful not to get caught up in all their hype and go in there thinking, we're automatic 45, 50 points a game. That's not how this stuff works. And the matchups on paper are one thing. It's how you match up on game day. Jimmy, I don't know if that's who that sniffling is in the background, whatever, but maybe you can add some and shed some light on this thing, because you've been in Knoxville for the last month, and they won every game when you were there, and they won again Saturday when you weren't there. So you got positive karma.
Well, I would be stunned if Tennessee isn't number 1 tonight, just because of the caliber of their opposition and the way they played after the Alabama game. A lot of programs wouldn't have been able to handle that. And the way they beat Kentucky, I mean, that was it was really surprising. I mean, I don't think that I've seen a bigger gap between Tennessee and Kentucky since maybe the second year of the Stoops era there than there was on Saturday night. So Tennessee is a team to be very concerned about. And I thought it was noteworthy that during his press conference yesterday that Kirby implored his fans, who will obviously all be there, to yell to the point that they can't talk after the game. And I think he wanted a noise level compared to the Arkansas game last year, where I think Arkansas, on their first 3 attempts to run a play from scrimmage, had false starts, So Kirby knows that Tennessee is really good. And I think where Tennessee really causes issues is that they don't really have to go on 10-play, 75-yard drives. I mean, they can give up one of those type drives and then just negate it on one play because they are so explosive. And that receiver core, there's not a team in the country, I don't think, that can match the receiver core they have. And when you've got 3 or 4 receivers of that level, that's a real challenge for a defense. And I think Jordan, really made a point that it's critical for Georgia, if they can't get outright sacks, they have to get hurries on Hooker to make him throw the ball before he wants to, because otherwise I think it's going to be really difficult to beat Tennessee no matter what the circumstances are.
I agree. And Jimmy, you made a good point, and I looked this up. I got a story come out around noon Eastern time. Tennessee is 125th in time of possession, but they're first in the nation. And you know what that tells you is they're scoring quick. They don't have to have these long sustained drives. So, I mean, I think that really interests me, the fact that they are one of, as far as how long they hold on to the ball, they are among the nation's, I guess, quote unquote, worst. But when you do that and you score quick, it's kind of hard to say that's a negative. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to learn a lot about this Georgia team. Even I think before the Florida game, a lot of us who covered the team, not even just people who are watching it, we're still saying we still got a lot to learn about this team. And, I think we saw more of it. But again, going back to Nolan Smith being hurt, we're going to learn a lot more about this defense. They need guys like inside linebacker Jamon Dumas-Johnson to step up. Malachi Starks had a huge error in that Florida game, led to a 78-yard touchdown. There are guys they know. Mykel Williams, defensive end, another true freshman. They have guys they have to have step up, or they're not going to win this game.
Well, you look at this game, you're right. Georgia getting ready for this Tennessee offense is like a storm shelter. Or, you've got a rain gear. Does it really work? Well, take it duck hunting. Get ready. You got a hurricane coming in. You got a tropical storm, whatever. That we don't know what they're going to do because Oregon couldn't do anything because Georgia wouldn't let them. And you talked about these guys for Georgia, Malachi Starks, Mykel Williams. That's the big freshman defensive lineman out of Columbus, Georgia, a 5-star. Georgia last year had so much experience, and Kirby Smart referenced that in the preseason when he said, we had all that experience, we had all that talent and all, and that's the reason why we were so good. But this year, and I hate that Pollyanna, flippant, just plug and fill. It's not that easy. But these guys are coached so well, Jordan. That's what gives Georgia the chance against everybody they play. That's why they were able to get the win on the road at Missouri, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. And what Kirby talked about back in the summer was, we're talented, we're just inexperienced. And you're seeing guys get more experience, guys like Malachi Starks and Mykel Williams that we just talked about. And, talking about Starks' mistake on Saturday, it's going to happen. True freshman. I mean, he was playing high school ball in Jefferson, Georgia this time last year. So, these guys, the only way you learn is going out there and doing it, and then sometimes doing it wrong and having to learn from it. But, I think that this is still a team that's got a chance to win the national title. This is a game that we're going to see, how things go. And even too, we've talked about this some of the other beat writers. If they were to lose this game, they're definitely not out of contention. This could be a situation like in 2017, Alabama loses the Iron Bowl. Well, then they make the playoff because Auburn loses to Georgia in the SEC title game. But these are the kind of games Georgia has to win if they are going to ultimately win the national title, because even if they don't play Tennessee, if they do make the playoff, they'll play a team like Ohio State. So, I mean, there's a lot at stake here. And, Georgia, last I looked, was maybe like an 8.5, 9-point favorite. I'll be interested to see. I could see that line moving a little bit farther down now that we know Nolan Smith is not going to be in the mix. But, people still seem to think that Sanford Stadium, that home field advantage is going to help Georgia. But I'm expecting 4 quarters of battle. I don't think this one's going to be decided until there's no time left.
It'll definitely be a full 60. Got a couple of minutes before we go to the break, and then we're going to come back with you for some more. But give me your top 4 you think you'll see on the color TV screen tonight.
Oh, man. I would say probably Tennessee, and then Georgia, and then Ohio State. And I guess it's probably going to be either TCU or Clemson. I think it might be TCU just based on who they beat. And I'm not sure Clemson really has any impressive wins, but I think Tennessee's going to be number 1. I think they're the resume they've got, the teams they've beaten, as Jimmy talked about earlier, I think it'll be them and then Georgia right after them.
Yeah, the Clemson issue, that's another one. If Georgia and Clemson played each other, that would be solved. But I just don't see anybody in the ACC the rest of the way out that's going to beat Clemson.
No, I don't either. No, I do not. And I think Clemson is a pretty good team, but I still think they strike me as a team that makes a playoff. And then like that year they played Alabama, I think they played in New Orleans where it was like 30-6. I think they'd make the playoff, but not really have a shot at moving on.
Yeah, and that's exactly what most people and Jimmy and everybody we talked to Tony Barnhart in the first segment, David Schultz right before you. It is just one of those years, and TCU's out there in the Big 12. And then you wonder, Oregon, they keep winning. And again, everybody's going to go back and say, well, Look what happened when you played Georgia at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, September 3rd. But teams get better as the season goes along. Some teams get worse, if that's possible. But we're going to be back with more with Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, talking Georgia and Tennessee. Rob Browne, Jimmy Hodge, broadcasting from Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Right back.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959 right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
All right, the law in Auburn since 1959. Phil Thompson, one of the partners there I have known for 40 years. They are great folks to work with. Jordan Hill, Jimmy Hodge, let's look at this now. The SEC race, I always like to say SEC East, SEC West, kind of every week. Who do you think, is the strongest of the two divisions? Up to this point, what do you see?
I mean, I think right now it's pretty neck and neck because I feel like in the West it's Alabama and LSU, and then in the East it's Georgia and Tennessee. I think I maybe give the East an edge just because really, going down the list, I mean, it's pretty much in the West, Alabama and LSU, and then I guess Mississippi State and Ole Miss after that. But East, at least you got Georgia, Tennessee. I still think that Kentucky team's pretty good, even though they lost the way they did. But I think it's pretty neck and neck just because we've seen South Carolina kind of fall off. Missouri is where it is. Florida obviously is where it is. And then in the West, it feels like to me both divisions are pretty top heavy at this point in the year.
And you think about it, Kentucky, now they got 3 losses. They got the win on the road at Florida. But what has Kentucky done this year? What have they accomplished? I mean, in real time, who have they beaten?
Nobody of real note. And I'll shout out my buddy, Jake Rowe, who covers Georgia for On 3. He was ripping into Will Levis as we watched that game after being in Jacksonville. And I didn't think Will Levis was very impressive on Saturday. And again, he can't do it alone. I know Chris Rodriguez got hurt in that game against Tennessee, but not the kind of performance I would want to see out of someone who some people think could be the top quarterback taken. I don't see that. And Kentucky, credit to Mark Stoops and the job they've done, but I still think that they're not any better than 8 and 9. Which again, he took over a Kentucky program that was in a real rough state, and to get it where it is admirable. But I mean, I still don't think they are past being about an 8 and 9 team win team year after year.
Well, I mean, to me, if you don't show up and perform on the big stage, you're not big time. And Will Levis is known more for eating bananas with the skin and putting mayonnaise in his coffee than he is winning big games. I mean, if I'm an NFL executive, GM, player personnel director, coach, scout, whatever, that's what I'm looking at. Because wait till you get to the NFL, son, because everybody there is getting a check and they're paid because they're the best of the best. And so Kentucky, just being Kentucky, you're right. They haven't beaten. I mean, the Florida win with every passing week becomes less of a who cares. That's just where it is. But I look at this and the noise out there, in the SEC West in the preseason. A&M, they're going to unseat Alabama. I think the media, the national media, Jordan, they love this idea of what A&M can be or could be. But, they've got one double-digit win season in this millennium. Now, you name me an SEC school that has more resources and money than Texas A&M.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for that contract, Jimbo Fisher would be fired this year. I feel pretty comfortable. But I mean, I can't remember what his buyout is. Maybe like $95 million, something just
Yeah.
bonkers. Yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear that they are the team probably in the entire country that has underperformed the most. And, I think it's a situation where Jimbo hasn't been willing to kind of, quote unquote, get with the times to really make his offense more efficient, to make his offense more modern, at least in some aspects. I've seen a lot of people compare it to, credit to Nick Saban, who noticed how offenses was changing and saying, all right,
Yeah.
let's do this. And I think the great coaches figure out how to change, the way they operate, that they say, what is going to help us win? You can't be married to a certain scheme or a certain system. You have to win with what works, because, you can be hard headed and say, well, this has always worked, but it only lasts so long. And coaches, even the coaches who might be the best in the country, there are coaches on other teams that are pretty dang smart, and they're going to figure out ways to manipulate and try to beat opponents. And you got to be, it's adapt or die. I mean, that's essentially what college football coaching is.
Yeah, improvise, adapt, and overcome, push through, and execute. And that is, some of these guys are hard-headed, and they become darlings of the media. But ask yourself this: if you're an A&M fan and you're being asked to shell out millions of dollars, and they've got boosters that do it, at the drop of a hat, good for them. But you got to ask this: what did you gain by firing Kevin Sumlin, paying him a buyout and his assistant coaches, and bringing in Jimbo and giving up all your leverage? He's got an $85 million buyout because in year 5, at the same number of games played, 57 games, Kevin Sumlin had won more games than Jimbo. He had more wins against top 10 and top 25 teams at home and on the road than Jimbo. So there's this idea, there's this myth of what Jimbo could be. I mean, look, I don't have anything against the guy personally, but again, I look at the money that you're spending and where's the return on investment? In the investment world, those portfolio managers would be fired. Their stuff would be put in a box. They'd be escorted to the front door with security, and their gate, their keys, everything like that, their passcodes would all be stripped and they'd be gone. And here we are. But that's, I don't know. Again, you look at Georgia and Texas A&M. You look at the two schools. A third as many people in Georgia as there are in Texas. And where's the ROI? That's just amazing. Jimmy, you look at it. Jordan, you look at it from 40,000 feet above. I just, now Texas is coming in the league. And when Texas is really rolling, it's going to make it hard for Texas A&M to recruit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be really interesting because it's not going to get any easier. Texas A&M was not happy when Oklahoma and Texas got in the conference, and for good reason. They had the advantage of being able to stay in the state and also recruit other players that, Oklahoma and Texas were interested in, and say, do you want to come play SEC football? Well, if you're going to do it in the state of Texas or in this region, you got to come to Texas A&M. They don't have that advantage anymore. And,
right.
And I mean, it's another situation where, it's really hard to say what the draw would be to go to Texas A&M other than NIL opportunity, because it's not winning right now. That can change. A lot of these freshmen, if they can really sell, hey, next year we're going to be better with all these true freshmen we had in 2022. But, the shine is off when it comes to Texas A&M, especially with recruiting. And, I think that you're going to see it, that once Oklahoma and Texas get in this conference, it's going to be really hard for Texas A&M to stand out like they did, 2-3 last 4 years or so, now that we know that these other teams are coming.
Yeah, and Texas A&M, they have incredible fans. They've got a lot of traditions. Some of them I don't really understand, the cheers and all the hand signals and stuff with the orderlies. But you know what? You're right. And you sit there and you look at programs. This is the way it works. People that never work and inherit money, born on third base and think they hit a triple. Okay. they're not a lot of fun to be around. Most of them are miserable drunks. Okay. But you get people that are self-made, hardworking. They go out and they earn their money. They're a lot more fun to hang out with. Okay. So I think dumping all this NIL money on people that are 18 and 19 years old, you get what you pay for. And NIL was supposed to be about you've proven yourself. Now you've got something that you can be paid for. But I'm telling you, this stuff's not going to work in the present state. That's why I say the free market will work it out. And I know people will say, Rob, it's never going to be the way it used to be. Yeah, it will. It will. The more things change, the more they stay the same. This is the latest attempt to try to appease student athletes. Go make money and stuff like that. But fans are not going to do this very long. They're not going to continue. If I'm an A&M fan and I'm being asked to pump money into that mess, I'm going, no, go out and prove something before I give any more money. Jimmy, wouldn't you be like that?
You muted.
Yeah. Okay. I think that, and Jimmy, if you're an A&M booster and you're J. Rodney Scroggins Jr. the third, and you're worth about $500 million, and the price of oil going up, you're real happy. But you're going, well, I give you money last year, and I say, son, boy, back off. You're not getting any return on the investment. Why are you asking me for more money? I say, no, boy, foghorn leghorn. Are you going to keep giving them money when you're getting next to nothing in ROI?
Well, they're in a tough situation. I mean, I think A&M would be fine if they had the right coach, but they're stuck with Jimbo for a minimum of 5 or 6 more years, and then even then the buyout would be north of $30 million. So they're just in a really bad situation. He has proved up to this point that he can't develop quarterbacks, and even Kellen Mond, who was a 4-year starter, was frustratingly inconsistent. I mean, he would look great one week, terrible the next. So they're in a bind. But if A&M got the right coach, I mean, they could hang with anybody because and in fact, finally, after the A&M and the Texas Oklahoma addition to the SEC was announced, it took a couple of weeks, but I think the A&M people have embraced it because again, they have all the resources. They just need to get the right coach, and that's where they're struggling right now.
Yeah, it is. Hey, Jordan Davis Hill, unbelievable stuff today. And looking at the clock, we're gonna go on to Johnny Ballpark Franks. But Jordan Hill, tell people how they can follow you, because again, I'm with Jimmy. You get the right coach at A&M, you can win. It's just I just don't think they have the right guy. But look forward to hearing from you next week. And I'm excited. Give us a score, Georgia, Tennessee.
I'll say Georgia 31-27. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Tennessee was able to win it, but just kind of feeling with that being at home, I think Georgia's going to get the advantage. And yeah, everybody can follow me on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill, at Dogs247, and Dogs247.com. Got all kinds of content this week with this big game coming on Saturday.
Appreciate it. And folks, if you follow him on Twitter, he's putting out stuff constantly. Got to love it. Have a great week.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You bet. All right, Johnny Ballpark Franks up in Nashville, Mondays on the Ump in Huntsville. This guy, he is the Heisman interviewer. He is in touch and has interviewed more Heisman Trophy winners than anybody. Johnny Ballpark Franks, let's get started. You're looking at college football 40,000 feet up above. You're a giant drone. You're our aerial reconnaissance. Pinpoint the areas where there's problems and where you see good things happening.
Well, I first of all, the big game, and I think it will be Tennessee, by the way, number 1 tonight. So right now they have Georgia 1 and Tennessee 2 since they're tied with Ohio State in the AP poll. The AP poll and the coaches poll will not matter after tonight, because this is when we get the first unveiling of the poll from the selection committee. And remember, it's not what we think you're going to do, it's what have you done so far. And I think this is where Tennessee gets rewarded with 4 wins out of their last 5 games against top 25 competition, including Alabama. I expect Tennessee to be number 1, and I think that will last for another few days after they get beat on Saturday by Georgia. I don't think, I know people think it's going to be a close game. I think Georgia, this is where the players from last year, the experience shows. And the fact that, they've gone through the motions in a couple of games against Kent State and Missouri. I think Georgia wins by double digits. I'm thinking it's going to be like a 38-27 game on Saturday.
If you are Tennessee, that's the thing. Georgia has only lost one game the last 2 years. These guys are used to winning. And again, they're talented. They're really talented. They got 10 sacks on the year. Do you see them being able to put enough pressure on Hendon Hooker to disrupt him just enough to where those timing routes just are off just enough? I mean, that's if I'm Georgia, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to try to do.
Well, what a better way to prepare for Tennessee if you're Georgia than having to deal with Florida last week. I mean, they had a very mobile quarterback, Florida. And this is where Georgia took the foot off the pedal there in that third quarter and allowed Florida to get back into the game. But I think both Georgia and Tennessee has been gearing up for this game. And I think that this is where, now that the calendar is switched to November, this week Ole Miss is off. This is the last time any team in the SEC will be off the rest of the regular season. So every week from here on out, all teams will be playing, and everybody understands that when the calendar switches to November, it does truly separate the contenders from the pretenders and vice versa. And this is also a great weekend historically over the past, 5 to 10 years that you see a lot of upsets. But as far as Georgia and LSU, hosting these two big games coming up on Saturday afternoon and Saturday night, I think Alabama will take care of business on Saturday night, just like I think Georgia will take care of business Saturday afternoon.
That's interesting. And again, you're looking down to November 12th. Ole Miss will be hosting Alabama at the Vault. All right, Johnny, got to look at ACC real quick. Florida State, Miami, Clemson, brand names. You go back in the last 40 years, you got 10 national championships among them. Of those three, who's one most likely to get the ACC in the college football playoff? I mean, Clemson, obviously, but I'm talking about with a legitimate chance to win, because
I don't think anybody – I think the ACC will be shut out. First of all, I think either Big Ten or SEC, or maybe even both, will get multiple teams in. It could be two teams from the Big Ten, meaning Ohio State, Michigan, and two teams from the SEC, Alabama, and either Georgia or Tennessee. But as far as Clemson, I think they get beat by Notre Dame this week. I don't like this Clemson team. I understand why they're ranked and as high as they are, but they've been very, very fortunate, and I think that all changes this weekend. Notre Dame brings them down. Notre Dame proved that on Saturday when they went into Syracuse and took care of business there. And Clemson has to go to Notre Dame this weekend. I don't think the ACC will get a team in the college football playoff. And so if TCU can somehow run the table, then I think it'll be a TCU team, or look for even a Pac-12 team. One of either the Big Ten or the SEC will get two teams in. And then I think your other two representatives.
Hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break because
Sure.
I want to hear this, because this is a great case that you're making. Johnny Ballpark Franks, Jimmy Hodge, Rob Browne with you right after this quick commercial break.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Ballpark, Franks, you had your 1 and 2. Let's go with your 3 and 4.
Honestly, and it's not because maybe, you can make the argument whether or not they deserve it or not, but I think that the committee would love to reward a team from the Pac-12. And so the ideal thing would be Oregon to run the table the rest of the way, USC to do the same thing. And remember, the Pac-12 does not have divisions any longer. It's just like the Big 12 as far as the way they get their 2 teams in for a championship. And right now, it would be Oregon, USC. If they could both run the table the rest of the way, then I feel like the winner of that Oregon USC game to decide the Pac-12 champion would be the team that would be in there. And then obviously if TCU can remain undefeated and then win the Big 12 championship game, then I think TCU would get in there. I just think Clemson will be revealed this weekend as just not like the other Clemson teams. And that's why I really believe in Notre Dame beating them coming up this weekend.
Well, that'd be big for Marcus Freeman in his first year after that awful start that they had. But this Clemson team, I'm with you, and we've talked about it. It's like everybody's waiting for the other shoe to drop. They're not playing. They don't have that, playing with their hair on fire that the teams of Clemson in the past have. But really, it started in the pandemic. They're not the same program. Obviously, when you lose a guy like Trevor Lawrence, that's a big deal. And they've stuck with DJ, whatever, but they've kept him around a long time. Why are they waiting forever to make a change at quarterback? If there's unless the way I see it, they're at practice every day. I'm not. So they must not have a better option.
Well, the honest part of this is the fact that, yes, there is an option, but he's not really proven. And so that's why they will go with Uga Ungalale. And, you look at what happened with Syracuse. They were very fortunate. They were down in that ball game and came back in the fourth quarter. They were very fortunate against Florida State. I think Florida State, they beat Florida State by 6, but some very questionable coaching decisions there right before the half that made a close game into a double-digit situation that Florida State was having to overcome. And look, here's Clemson. They struggled against Syracuse. They're at Notre Dame this week. Next week, they take on a Louisville team, a very dangerous Louisville team. And then remember, if North Carolina can complete their situation, Clemson would play North Carolina for the ACC title. North Carolina right now, a quiet 7-1, 4-0, undefeated as far as in conference play. I just don't think, when you look at these obstacles, plus we're not talking about a dominating Clemson team this year. I just don't think the ACC will have a representative. So Big Ten, SEC, certainly there. Could be multiple teams from either one of those conferences, and then have TCU circled. If there is a team from the Big 12, it will be TCU if they can remain unbeaten, and then look for a Pac-12 team, either Oregon or USC. But there's a lot of big ifs. Once again, we've got November. We got 4 weeks of the regular season. We got conference championship week. Yeah. As we've seen already this year, anything can happen with these next 5 weekends.
Yeah, it is. It's a great time of year, though. And again,
love it.
When we go to a 12-team playoff, Johnny, in November, this time of year, everybody in that top 25 can be saying, hey, we've got a realistic chance to get in the college football playoff. So I think it's going to take games that are played out west, Oregon State, Washington for the Apple Cup Bowl, or, whatever, the battle for the Big Blue Ox, rivalries around the country. It's going to keep people in the South wired in to those games. They're going to be interested in those games because it has reverberating effects. It's like, the NCAA basketball tournament. I'm not saying add more teams to make people feel good and be inclusive. That's a bunch of crapola. I'm talking about adding teams. It's going to create interest, and you never know. Look, I'd love to see the TV ratings on what happened when St. Peter's beat Kentucky and they went as far as they did in the tournament. I want my team to win, but Americans love underdogs.
Well, and listen, you asked about my perspective of the college football season, and let's for a second take time out and enjoy what we've seen over the first 2 months from teams like Illinois under Brett Bielema, who, by the way, I don't know why he's not at least Auburn should give him a look as far as filling their vacancy. I mean, here's a guy that is, I mean, if you can win at Illinois, you can win anywhere. He certainly was successful before he went to Arkansas. Understand things did not go that way, but sometimes coaches like that need that second opportunity as a head coach. But if you're 7-1 with Illinois, 14th in the country, you're doing something right. And how about Tulane? They're 7-1, ranked 19th. In Oregon State, how about the two teams from Oregon? Here's Oregon State 6-2, Oregon 7-1, a combined 13-3 for those two programs. I love those kind of stories.
Well, and Kenny Dillingham, went out there from Florida State after being with Bo his freshman year at Auburn. Look what's happening out there. Jimmy, jump back in here on this discussion with Johnny Ballpark Franks on the Hall of Fame, the Mount Rushmore of nicknames.
Well, I've got to say that if Clemson goes 13-0, I mean, they're going to be in. I mean, no doubt about it, but they're going to get blown out. So I don't think any of us wants to see a blowout in the college football playoff. But I think this is the year that's a classic argument for a 12-team playoff. Because what if you get a scenario where Georgia loses to Tennessee and then Alabama wins out and they beat Tennessee in the rematch? There is no way politically that the committee can pick 3 SEC teams in the playoff, and Georgia would be out, even though the 3 best teams in my mind right now, without question, are Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama. And yet, let's say Oregon wins the Pac-12 title, and they're in the playoff over a Georgia team that beat them 49-3. Man, that's just that's pretty tough to swallow right there. And I don't know how a team that loses a game 49-3, even if they do win their conference title, is is going to be able to get in. And then I think USC, I think they're going to be hard pressed to beat Oregon the way they're playing as it is. But this could get really complicated. And I think that if Ohio State loses to Michigan, there's no way they're getting in because they've beaten absolutely nobody. Their schedule has been a joke. And so I think Ohio State's out. Michigan might have an argument, and they would, if they go into this game undefeated against Ohio State, they would have a victory over Illinois. But if I'm Brett Bielema, there's no way I'm leaving the Big Ten. I mean, in 2 years, he's got Illinois in a position where they basically own the Western Division there. And I'm not jumping into that Auburn situation when I have no connection with Auburn. He needs to stay in his home state there where he has things really rolling right now. And but yeah, I think this would be this is the greatest argument for a 12-team playoff is the type of season we're having in college football this year. Because
how about the fact that the Battle of LA means something this year at this point? I mean, here we are going into the month of November, and USC and UCLA both 7-1. Now, UCLA is an interesting story because, they should have lost to South Alabama at home. Mm-hmm. Let that sink in for a second. However, if we're talking about both USC and UCLA ranked in the top 10, UCLA has already knocked off 2 teams ranked in the top 15, a 15th ranked Washington squad, 11th ranked Utah squad. They did lose to Oregon when Oregon was number 10, but that was a close battle, and Oregon came back and pulled away at the end. But this sets up a really nice matchup for USC, UCLA on November 19th. It could be UCLA taking on Oregon. And for me, if I'm on that committee, I would much rather see Oregon and USC, because if it's Oregon and UCLA beats Oregon, it kind of like maybe I don't look so fondly about the Pac-12 this year if that indeed happens. If I'm that committee and I want a representative from the Pac-12, I mean, give me a reason not to put you on there. To me, I think Oregon is the story if they can run the table, win the Pac-12 conference championship game, knowing their only loss was to Georgia. I think if I'm on that committee, that gives me a reason to really put a Pac-12 team on that in that college football playoff.
Battle of LA.
A 49-3 loss. I'm telling you, I just don't see it. But yeah, you never know.
Yeah, well, here's what I'm proposal, Johnny, Jimmy, everybody listening, to get people in attendance, because Southern Cal and UCLA and Pac-12 schools have suffered. Are they going to maybe say we're filming a movie at the stadium and get people to be extras?
I guess.
Or get people that
Well,
are
even
homeless
if they're
people
there,
to go?
though, have you seen? I watch all the games.
Yeah.
And I catch some USC games, and the place could be totally filled, and they make no noise. It's just like, they're being paid not to make any noise. And then I happened to catch an Alabama USC game back in the late 70s when Alabama went out there and upset a number 1 ranked USC squad. And same situation, so much to play for on a Saturday afternoon, nobody making noise. So whether it's the 70s or here we are in the 21st century, what is wrong with the fans out there? I mean, I know it's cool to be cool, but you really need to show some enthusiasm.
Well, it's like a tennis crowd or a golf crowd, everybody kind of whistling and going.
It is. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
It's like, how can that many people make so little noise? It's just mind-boggling to me.
It would be like it would be fun to go to one of those games, but again, the Southern Cal UCLA game. I've read a great description by a writer that covers it. He said, these fans are over the outcome by the time they get out in the parking lot back to their truck or car or whatever they drive, their sphere or their buggy, whatever. Fans in the South, man, they're going back and they start drinking. I mean, after a loss.
Jimmy, is this fair? Because you see it a lot with Dodgers baseball games. Is this a fair assessment that it's almost like, as a fan, you're going in, they're taking your ticket or they're scanning it, however they do it these days out there. And it's almost like they're already thinking, okay, what time are we going to be leaving the stadium before the game is over? Or is it going to be midway through the third quarter, early fourth? I mean, it seems like that's, if you can read somebody's mind, it's almost like that's going through their heads.
Well, it's like the Seinfeld episode.
I think another factor is that the stadiums out there are all shaped, like bowls where the noise tends to go out and up. Whereas the SEC stadiums at the larger schools are all double and triple deckers where the noise goes straight down, and it's so intimidating. And it makes a huge difference on TV. I mean, you can just hear the noise despite the announcers being in the press box. And that's a different factor too, but yeah. I think what's been surprising too with those fan bases is that SC and UCLA were just non-factors the last 7 or 8 years. Certainly during the Clay Helton years at USC, they were hoping he was gone 3 or 4 years before he was. And then, Chip Kelly took him 3 years, and now offensively they're really good. And by the way, if they played Oregon again, I don't think UCLA's defensive staff still knows where half those Oregon guys are lined up on offense from that first game. So I just don't see in a rematch UCLA having any shot against Oregon, because offensively they're just playing on a different planet, I think, from everybody else.
Yeah, Johnny, yesterday we had Matt Dean, our friend, on, whose son Tyler's on the football staff at Oregon with Dan Lanning. And that's what he said, is that it's so different, so organized. He took a chapter out of Kirby Smart's process, what he's doing at Georgia. Of course, he learned that in 9 years of being a defensive coordinator with Nick Saban, winning 4 national championships. Now he's got one of his own. But Oregon, we heard that Mario Cristobal was building an SEC team out there. Dan Lanning is converting them to an SEC team.
Well, and that's one of the things. I mean, we see, like, I know the Auburn position is now open, and it reminds me of Brian Harsin came in almost like with the same attitude. He should have learned from Bush Jones and Bush Jones's mistake. It's almost like they, it's them and then the school. It's almost like they could force their way of doing things onto a program. And sometimes it's called, you got to adjust. That's one of the problems why Jimbo Fisher is struggling so mightily with Texas A&M.
Yeah.
You've got it. I mean, Nick Saban, first one to admit he had to adjust. That's when they went to the spread. And that was one of the things that he talked about, the best advice he would have given himself back as a first-year head coach at Toledo: run the spread. And this is why with this Auburn hire, for example, whoever they go with, it has to be somebody who understands what Auburn means. I did look this back, and people don't even understand this, because when they think about winning in college football in the state of Alabama, they automatically think about all the success Alabama has. How about the fact that you go all the way back to 1951, and before Brian Harsin, the last 7 coaches, 6 of the 7, had either won a national championship, played for a national title, or had an undefeated season.
Yeah.
And I mean, the only one that did not was Doug Barfield after he replaced Shug Jordan right before Pat Dye.
Yeah.
Everyone else, including Shug Jordan, including Pat Dye, Terry Bowden, Tommy Tuberville, Gene Chizik, Gus Malzahn. And so what I mean by that is everybody thinks that Auburn is a down program and all this. Auburn has a great tradition. You can win at Auburn. All these other coaches has proven that you can win at Auburn. You need to get somebody who understands that, understands how to win the SEC, understands name, image, and likeness, and how that impacts your football program, and get the job done.
Yeah.
And Brian Harsin, that's where his biggest mistake was. He thought he could do whatever he was doing at Boise State and come in and show everybody this is the way we do things. And what happened? It didn't get done. You're not going to win games in the SEC with 3 stars and thinking that you can coach them up.
Yeah, look, we're running out of time right now. And Brian Harsin, I heard it said best. He came in as a man, as a coach, with everything to teach and nothing to learn, and that really bit him. Hey, go out and help somebody with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Don't give to get, give to give. We most often see the face of Christ in the least among us. And remember, we'll be back tomorrow. You missed this show, we'll be back tomorrow. Check it out on our website, sidelines.live, 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta, Kicks 96.3, Alexander City, Lake Martin, all you lucky people sitting out there on 750 miles of shoreline. We appreciate our listeners and our viewers. For everybody, thanks so much. We'll see you tomorrow.